Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
All right, here we go. Back for some more remastered Earp Part 3, which means we are on the old Vendetta ride. If you guys tuned in to our last part about Earp, you know that the old gunfight at the OK Corral just took place. Lots of people are dead. And killing just began. We all know Sheriff Behan is on the side of the Cowboys, and they're looking to arrest Virgil and them. Well, they did. They had the trial, and then they all got cleared. But the Cowboys want revenge, and they will get their revenge, sort of.
yeah,
Because about 11:30 p.m., December 28th, 1881, Virgil, he was ambushed as he walked from the Oriental Saloon to his room. The Sacramento Daily Record Union, they reported that he was fired upon with double-barreled shotguns loaded with buckshot by three men concealed in an unfinished building diagonally across on Allen Street.
damn.
Virgil, he was hit in the back and left arm by three loads of buckshot from about 60 feet. The Crystal Palace Saloon and the Eagle Brewery behind Virgil, they were struck by 19 buckshot. Three passed through the window and one about a foot over the heads of some man standing at a faro table.
Yeah, that's dangerous when you're shooting buckshot.
Well, George Parsons, he wrote that he heard 4 shots in quick succession. Critically wounded Virgil, he staggered into the hotel. Virgil, what you forget now? Virgil! Virgil!
Wyatt, he telegraphed U.S. Marshal Crawley Dake. He requested appointment as Deputy U.S. Marshal for Eastern Pima County and authority to form a posse. Dake, he replied affirmatively by telegraph, and Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp deputized Warren Earp, Doc Holliday, Sherman McMaster, Jack Johnson, they call him Turkey Creek, Charlie Hairlip Charlie Smith, and Daniel Tipton, and also John Texas Jack Vermillion.
Oh, John Vermillion.
He's like, this is my posse, and we're going to protect my family and pursue these suspects who shot my boy Virgil. He paid him $5 a day.
That's not bad. January 1882, about a month, actually only less than a month later, Wyatt Earp, he sought and received warrants from Judge William Stillwell for the arrest of the men thought responsible for ambushing Virgil. Judge Stillwell, he was among a number of county citizens unhappy with Sheriff Behan's failure to stop the Cowboys' ongoing criminal activity. January 17th, that same year, Johnny Ringo and Doc Holliday had traded threats, resulting in their arrests by Tombstone's chief of police, James Flynn.
Got to do it.
Both were fined. Judge Stillwell noted that charges were still outstanding against Ringo for a robbery in Galeyville. Ringo, he was then rearrested and jailed January 20th.
All right. 23rd January, Wyatt, he rode with his deputized posse. They rode to Charleston, Arizona, where Ike Clanton, his brother Finn, and Pony Dial, they were known to stay there. And they're like, we got to go to Charleston, Arizona. Ringo, he's still in jail. He learned that the Earps had warrants and were headed for Charleston. He arranged for bail. Sheriff Behan released him.
So he could get a fucking telegraph, probably.
He released him before even the bail payment even arrived. Wow. James Earp immediately filed an affidavit saying Ringo was an escaped prisoner and charged that Ringo intended to interfere with Wyatt's execution of the warrants. Ringo immediately rode to Charleston to warn his cowboy friends. Of course he did. This Behan guy, how is he even still sheriff?
On the way to Charleston, Earp's posse was joined by 30 more riders from Tombstone.
Damn.
They found Ben Maynard, who was a known cowboy associate, outside Charleston and arrested him.
All right.
With Maynard in front, the posse took over the small town and went door to door looking for the Clantons and Dial. Ringo, he was rearrested in Charleston, but not before he warned the Clantons, who left town.
Obviously.
The next day, the posse scouted the countryside, eventually stopping at a camp near Tombstone known as Pick 'em Up Camp. Complicated matters, the Tombstone deputy sheriff rode out to pick him up and served a warrant on McMaster, who was one of Wyatt's crew, and he was accused of stealing 2 horses from the contention mine.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, man.
What's up with these Tombstone deputies? Are they dumb?
Yes.
Wow. The Earp posse rode back into Tombstone, where Sherman McMaster made bail. He and Charlie Smith, they took a room at the Cosmopolitan Hotel near the Earps. 30th of January, Ike and Finn Clanton surrendered to Wells Fargo agent Charlie Bartholomew, and then they were jailed in Tombstone. They learned that the warrant was not for armed robbery, as they thought, but for assault with intent to commit murder.
They were like, well, get this over with. They can't prove the robbery, but they're like, oh, shit, this is for Virgil.
Right. Yeah, and this was obviously the specific event that happened to Virgil.
February 2nd, the Clantons, they were tried before Judge Stillwell. Ike's hat had been found at the scene, like we said last episode. And McMaster testified he heard Ike talk about the shooting in Charleston later that evening.
Right.
He said that when Ike learned that Virgil had survived, Ike said he would have to go back and do the job over.
Ooh.
However, Charleston Constable George McKelvey, saloon owner J.B. Ayers, and 5 others testified that Ike had been in Charleston and could not have possibly taken part in the shooting. The charges were dismissed for lack of evidence.
You gotta have evidence. Sorry to tell you. Wyatt later said that the Judge Stillwell told him, Wyatt, you'll never clean up this crowd this way. Next time, you better leave your prisoners in the brush where alibis don't count.
Yep.
Ooh-wee.
You think he would have known that anyways?
All right. Ike Clanton refiled murder charges against the Earps.
It's just like back in this day, you can file the charges.
Right. Like, oh, yeah? He did that in Contention, Arizona for their killing of his brother and the McLaury brothers. When he could not provide new evidence, the charges were dismissed, obviously. 13th February, Wyatt, he mortgaged his home to lawyer James Howard for $365, about $11,500 today. But he was never able to repay the loan. In 1884, Howard foreclosed. 17th February, the Earp posse left Tombstone, heavily armed, and with a warrant for the arrest of Pony Dale. He was suspected in January 1882 stage robbery. Unsuccessful, they returned to town a few days later, hearing rumors that the old Cowboys were plotting further revenge. I don't want you to stay in town.
Well, Saturday evening, March 18th, 1882, Tombstone's Shiflin Hall was host to Stolen Kisses, which was a play by William Horace Lingard and Company. Despite having received death threats earlier that day, Morgan, Doc, and Dan Tipton, they attended. Wyatt and Benjamin Goodrich, they cautioned against attending, saying, you don't know, these guys are going to do something.
Right.
Afterward, Doc went to his room. Morgan and Tipton, they headed for Hatch's Saloon, and they want to go play some pool.
Yes, they did.
That Hatch's Saloon had become their unofficial headquarters after the Oriental Hotel was sold, so they had to get out of there.
You got to find a new place to hang out, man. Old Morgan and Bob Hatch, they began a game of pool. Wyatt, Tipton, McMaster, they watched. Table was near the back door.
Why would you make a place your hideout that has literal windows and doors everywhere?
Right. At about 10:50 p.m., someone fired 2 shots through the window of the back door. One bullet passed through Morgan, shattered his spine, and then lodged in the thigh of George A.B. Barry. Another bullet struck the wall over Wyatt's head. Damn. Wyatt.
Do you think he was shooting at Wyatt, too? He had to have, right?
Man. Wyatt, McMaster, and Tipton, they pulled Morgan out of the line of fire while Hatch dashed outside looking for the shooters. Morgan, he died within the hour.
He sure did.
Damn.
Well, while Wyatt and James were traveling to Contention with Morgan's body, coroner Dr. D.M. Matthew held an inquest into Morgan's death. During that inquest, Pete Spence's wife, Marietta Dorte, implicated her husband and 4 other men in Morgan's murder. She testified that along with her husband, Frank Stillwell, a man named Fries, later identified as Frederick Bodie, and 2 Indians, later identified as Hank Swillen and Florentino Cruz, they took part in the killing as well.
Oh, shit. Here we go. She also testified that 4 days before the shooting, she and her mother, they were standing at Spence's house when Morgan walked by. The Indian then started down the street and got ahead of him to get a good look at him. She also stated that on the night of the shooting, she and her mother heard the shots, and a few minutes later, Stillwell and Indian Charlie, they came into their home, followed shortly by Spence, Bodie, and the other Indian. Oh,
shit.
Uh-oh.
Well, Marietta recalled that the men were excited, and the next morning her husband threatened her with violence if she told what she knew.
Ooh.
She says, Spence didn't tell me so, but I know he killed Morgan Earp. Additional witnesses said they saw Frank Stillwell running from the scene. And like the gunfight 3 months earlier, Morgan's murder was national news.
Damn.
The Los Angeles Herald, this is L.A., reported Tombstone, Arizona Territory, March 23rd. The coroner's jury find that Morgan Earp came to his death at the hands of Frank Stillwell, who was killed the next day in Tucson. We'll get to that. Pete Spence, 1 Frey, and 2 half-breed Indians. Pete Spence's wife exposes the plot.
Oh.
Damn. Blasted her, didn't she?
Damn.
Sheriff's posse consisted of 20 men, mostly cowboys. They left this morning for the Dragoon Mountains, where the Earps are supposed to be at present.
Oh.
Sheriff made a weak attempt to arrest them at Cosmopolitan Hotel before they left, but Wyatt Earp told him he didn't want to see him, that he had seen him once too often, and thereupon the Earp party mounted their horses and rode away. There's a very uneasy feeling among the cowboy element, as the Earps are rendered desperate by the attempted assassination of Virgil Earp and the cold-blooded murder of Morgan.
Oh, wow.
Damn, dude. The fucking... What is this, a movie script?
You ain't kidding.
Papers didn't play it. Dude, papers didn't play around back then. They would literally...
They had to.
tell you exactly what happened to somebody that got killed.
That's the only way. They had to do it that way. Damn. The coroner's jury concluded that Spence, Stillwell, Freeze, and 2 half-breed Indians were responsible for Morgan's murder. Unknown to Wyatt, 3 of the cowboys he sought were in Behan's jail. After the
You think Behan would tell him? Of course not.
I think he's probably keeping them there.
Obviously.
After the coroner's jury ended, Spence immediately turned himself in, protected in Behan's jail as well. On the day of the inquest, 2 of Behan's deputies arrested 2 more suspects for other reasons.
Yeah.
Cochise County Deputy Sheriff William Bell, he brought Indian Charlie from Charleston and placed him under arrest in Tombstone for shooting a man in Charleston. Charleston not have their own jail, or was Tombstone?
He was wanted in Tombstone.
Separately?
Oh, no. They was shooting a man in Charleston, so why did he take him to Tombstone?
Right.
Maybe that's the headquarters because sheriff is the sheriff of the county.
Right. Could be. Separately, Cochise County Deputy Frank Hereford, he arrested John Doe Freeze. They were all later released.
Jeez. Well, when Wyatt Earp learned of the judge's ruling of them all getting released, he felt he could not rely on the court system for justice. Plus, Stillwell had already told him that
Right, that's what the judge said.
Go get him. Meanwhile, the other Stillwell, the cowboy, he had previously been acquitted of 2 homicides and a stage robbery. And in Wyatt Earp's opinion, he and the other cowboys had gotten away with murder again.
Damn right.
Wyatt decided to take matters into his own hands, concluding that the only way to deal with Virgil and Morgan's attackers and the continued threat against the entire family was to kill the responsible cowboys.
Nice.
Yes, sir. You tell him hell's coming with me.
Yeah. Wow. Sunday, 19th of March, 1882. Day after Morgan's Moida.
Morgan's Moida.
That's a new TV show.
This week on Morgan's Moida.
Morgan's Moida. Deputy United States Marshal Wyatt Earp, his brother James, and a group of friends prepared to accompany Virgil and his wife, along with Morgan's body, to the railhead in Benson.
Yeah, we got to take him back to lay him to rest.
From there, James would accompany them to the family home in Colton, California. Morgan's wife and parents, they waited to bury him. On Monday, Wyatt received information that Frank Stillwell, Ike Clanton, Hank Swillen, and another cowboy, they were watching the passenger trains in Tucson, intending to kill Virgil. He said, not today, Charlie. He thought getting the still invalid Virgil to Tucson safely would require extra help.
Yeah, I would assume. Well, Wyatt, he was accompanied by Warren Earp, Doc Holliday, Turkey Creek Jack Johnson, and Sherman McMaster. They guarded Virgil and Allie, who was his wife.
Right.
In Contention City, they stabled the horses and picked up an extra wagon. They rode in the wagon to the railhead in Benson, where they caught the next train to Tucson. They were all heavily armed with shotguns or rifles, except for Virgil, who had a pistol.
Right.
That's all he can use.
Right.
Nathan Waite of Ash Cannon in the Huachuca Mountains was on the train with Earp party. He said the Earp men were all armed, and McMaster was wearing 2 cartridge belts. He said he's ready for a fight.
You ain't getting. Well, in Tucson, the party was greeted at the train station by Deputy U.S. Marshal Joseph Evans. Look at that. Virgil and other witnesses later reported that they saw Stillwell, Clanton, and the other cowboys at the train station. Almost the first man we met on the platform there were Stillwell and his friends, armed to the teeth, Virgil said to San Francisco Examiner later on. They fell back into the crowd as soon as they saw I had an escort, and the boys took me to the hotel to supper.
Did they really think he was going to arrive by himself?
Right.
That's how G the Earps are. They went into the hotel thing and had dinner. Like, fuck you guys.
Right. Watched over by a well-armed Wyatt and his posse, Virgil and Allie, they had dinner in Tucson at Porter's Hotel. Marshal Evans saw Holliday deposit 2 shotguns at the railroad station office. That's it.
Well, he got more. After the Earp group finished dinner at Porter's Hotel, they returned to the train. Holliday asked someone to get his shotguns. Wyatt escorted Virgil and Allie aboard, and a passenger told Virgil he saw men lying on a flat car near the engine. Wyatt, he saw them too, and he slipped between the tracks looking for them. As the train pulled away from the Tucson station about 7:15 p.m., 6 or 7 shots were heard. Witnesses gave different accounts, but nevertheless, Frank Stillwell's body was found on the morning of March 21st, about 100 yards from the Porter Hotel alongside the tracks, riddled with 2 buckshot and 3 gunshot wounds.
Damn.
George Hand, who saw the body, said Stillwell was the worst shot-up man I ever saw. They f***ed him up.
Damn.
Right in the face, too, I would assume.
Coroner Dr. Dexter Lyford, he found a single bullet wound through Stillwell's body under his armpits. A wound from a rifle through the upper left arm. A buckshot wound that passed through the liver, abdomen, stomach. Ooh, that's the shot. Another buckshot wound that fractured his left leg, and a rifle wound through the right leg.
Is that purposely?
I think so. Suffer, motherfucker.
Right.
The coroner concluded that Stillwell had been shot by 5 different weapons.
Jeez.
Either the gunshot under his arm or the buckshot through the abdomen that went through the liver and all the other shit. One of those killed him. Or both.
Right. One of them, both were. They were going to. Whatever
Probably
one
the one
is.
that went through the armpit. You think that hit your heart and lungs?
Probably, right? Either or one of them was killing him.
Right.
The Tombstone Epitaph reported the next day that Stillwell had been shot 6 times. They reported that the round of buckshot in the torso had struck him at such a close range that 6 buckshot left holes within a radius of 3 inches. Dude, that is... Holy crap. That left powder burns on his coat as well. Many years later, Wyatt told his biographer, Flood, that he and his party had seen Clanton and Stillwell on the tracks with weapons, and he had shot Stillwell. Federal deputies looked hard for another man whom Wyatt identified as Ike Clanton, but he got away. I don't think they ever catch Ike.
Ike, he claimed in a newspaper interview afterward that he and Stillwell had been in Tucson to respond to a federal subpoena for interfering with the United States mail carrier when he was allegedly robbed the Sandy Bob line of the Bisbee stage, which was supposedly happened on the 8th of September, year 1881. The federal charges had been filed by Virgil after Stillwell was acquitted for lack of evidence on the state charges of robbery. Oh, so he's trying to do whatever he can, huh? Well, Ike, he said he had heard that the Earps were coming in on a train to kill Stillwell. According to Clanton, Stillwell left the hotel and was last seen walking down railroad tracks, away from the Porter Hotel, towards where his body was later found on the tracks.
Well, on the other hand, Virgil told the Examiner, one thing is certain, if I had been without an escort, they would have killed me.
You ain't kidding.
The next day, the newspapers were full of news about Frank Stillwell's death. The Arizona Star reported, without any provocation, a band of 4 or 5 slayers pursued a lonely man in the dark, and without a word of warning, murdered him in cold blood.
Oh, wow.
And then hid to their stamping grounds as unconcerned as though they had been out on a hunting expedition.
Wow.
Or like so many bloodthirsty Apaches rejoice over the crime. Oh, wow.
They're very painful.
The Arizona Star really got so hard on for these Cowboys,
You
huh?
ain't kidding.
The coroner's jury in Tucson found Stillwell had died at the hands of Wyatt and Morgan Earp, Holiday, McMaster, and Johnson. Tucson Justice of the Peace Charles Meyer issued arrest warrants for the 5 of them.
I mean, you got to.
I mean, obviously you got to go through the law.
Right.
But he's a deputy.
Well, doesn't matter.
But I'm a deputy.
20th of March, night of, after killing Stillwell in Tucson, verifying that his brother was on his way to California safely, the Earp party was on foot. No horses for his men. They walked 9 miles southeast back to the Southern Pacific tracks out of Tucson to the
They walked
Papago?
along the Southern Pacific tracks.
Papago? The Papago freight stop?
Sure.
At the Papago stop, they flagged down the night freight train back to the terminal in Benson.
Say, hey, let's go, boys.
Yep. Did they have none right? Once in Benson, they hired a wagon back to Contention, where they picked up their stabled horses.
There's some horses.
They rode into Tombstone about 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, 21st of March. Once in Tombstone, they learned of Marietta Duarte's testimony during the coroner's inquest into Morgan's death. She told the jury that her husband, Pete Spence, and several others.
We know. Yeah.
Yep, they said they did it.
So now they got a new target, boys. The Earps returned to the rooms upstairs at the Cosmopolitan, where they had lived in close company. Yeah. And Wyatt, Warren, Holiday, Texas Jack, Turkey Creek, and McMaster, they were now wanted men due to the outstanding warrants. Tucson, where the Earps had killed Stillwell, was in the jurisdiction of Pima County. Sheriff Bob Paul, who was a friend of the Earps, though.
Okay. He and District Attorney Alex Gamble, they sent a telegram to Behan in Tombstone, asking him to arrest the Earps.
Oh, okay.
Telegraph office manager was a friend of the Earps and showed the message to Wyatt before it was delivered to Behan. The operator agreed to delay delivering the message to Behan long enough to allow the Earps and their associates to make ready to leave town Tuesday evening.
Damn.
Earp sent instructions to Montgomery Stable to get their horses saddled. Saddle them up, boys. Run away.
Early in that evening, Behan indeed received a delayed telegram. He gathered his deputies and Tombstone City Marshal Dave Neagle. They met in front of the Cosmopolitan Hotel preparing to arrest the 5 men. Behan encountered the heavily armed Earp lawmen as they passed through the lobby of the Cosmopolitan, getting ready to pick up their horses from the stable and leave. Behan, he said, Wyatt, I want to see you. Wyatt replied without stopping, Johnny, if you're not careful, you'll see me once too often,
Ooh.
as the newspaper reported earlier.
Right. I mean, he just told you last time.
Right.
It was too often.
Behan or his posse, they made no attempt to stop the Earp party.
Dude, Behan ain't
He's
messing
a
with
pussy.
these other bitches. Not at all.
They'll chase him down in about 2 hours, let him get out of town.
Right.
And
And
we
they
went
said
and looked for him.
I'm fast. The Tombstone Epitaph reported this. The sheriff made a weak attempt to arrest them at the Cosmopolitan Hotel before they left. But Wyatt Earp told him he didn't want to see him, that he had seen him once too often. And thereupon, the Earp party mounted their horses and rode away.
Bye.
One of Behan's deputies, Billy Breckenridge, he claimed that Wyatt and his men resisted arrest and even pulled their guns on Behan and Dave Neagle, one of Wyatt's friends, to prevent their arrest.
Yeah, sure.
Right. In a story published on 14th of May, 1893, Wyatt, he told a reporter for the Denver Republican, the sheriff called on me to surrender. I told him I would not do it. He assembled a posse about the door of my room to take me in, but I walked through the men. None of them offered to lay a hand upon me.
That I probably believe.
Yeah.
Wyatt, Warren, Doc, Johnson, McMaster. They were joined by Texas Jack, Dan Tipton, Charlie Smith, Fred Dodge, Johnny Green, and Louis Cooley to form a federal posse under Wyatt's authority as the deputy U.S. Marshal.
Damn.
Continuing to ignore Behan, the Earp posse rode out of town the same evening, Tuesday, March 21st. The next morning, Behan, like I said, he would form a posse consisting of a number of deputized cowboys, if that's not sketchy,
Right.
who were friends of Frank and Ike, including Johnny Ringo and Phineas Clanton, Johnny Barnes, and about 18 more.
Damn.
They rode after the federal posse and the 5 men wanted for Stillwell's murder. Damn, that would have been a hell of a standoff right there. Like,
You ain't kidding.
a nice little battle.
Morning of 22nd of March, portion of the Earp posse, including Wyatt, Warren, Doc, McMaster, and Turkey Creek Johnson, they rode 10 miles east to Pete Spence's ranch and woodcutting camp off the Chiricoa Road, below the South Pass of the Dragoon Mountains. According to Theodore Judah, who witnessed events at the wood camp, the Earp posse arrived around 11 a.m. and asked him about the location of Pete Spence and Florentino Cruz.
Call him Indian Charlie.
He told them Spence was in jail in Tombstone and that Cruz was cutting wood nearby. They followed the direction of Judah indicated, and Judah soon heard 10 to 12 shots fired. Judah looked for Cruz that night without success. The next morning, he went looking for him again. This time, he found his body full of bullets.
Yep. Well, one supposed account says that after the party recognized Cruz, they chased him down and a gunfight ensued. The party managed to capture a fatally wounded Cruz, and he confessed to have taken part in Morgan's murder, and that he identified Stillwell, Hank Swillen, Curly Bill, and Johnny Ringo as the others who killed him. During that time, in Wyatt's own account, he allowed Cruz to keep his revolver and his holster to give him a chance to fight like a man.
Right.
After Cruz's confession, Wyatt gave him the permission to draw his revolver, which Cruz did, but Wyatt managed to draw his gun first and killed him with one shot. The dude's already dead.
Right.
Wyatt's account of him killing Cruz in a duel is contradicted by Cruz's fatal wounds, though, which was one to the temple and the second through his right side.
Oh.
Yeah, unless he shot him in his right side and then put a one in his head for good measure afterwards.
Right. Man.
Either way, he's dead.
Right. Thursday, 23rd of March, Smith and Tipton, they left the main body of the posse to obtain information and money in Tombstone. The rest of the posse rode about 12 miles west, and on the night of the 23rd of March, they stayed in a campsite northwest of Tombstone, between Contention and Drew Station.
Why are they all just
Right. Hovering
get
around.
away, dude?
Right. Behan saw Smith and Tipton in town and arrested him for resisting arrest and conspiracy.
Quote unquote.
The men immediately paid their bond. Smith left Tombstone and rejoined the federal posse, but Tipton, he said, I'm going to stick around here, guys. When Smith rejoined the group, Earp asked him to return to town and raise $1,000 to cover the posse's expense. Earp later said that he told Smith, meet us at Iron Springs. Don't lose any time. We'll be waiting there.
March 27th, Smith and Tipton, they were brought before Judge A.J. Felter in Tombstone. The defense asked the judge to dismiss the charges because Behan lacked a warrant, and the judge agreed, freeing the men.
Friday, 24th of March, in Tombstone, Dr. George Goodfellow, acting as coroner, examined Cruz's body. At the coroner's inquest, Goodfellow testified that he found 4 wounds in Cruz. 1 shot through his right temple and in the brain, a slight flesh wound to the right shoulder,
Ooh, nicked him.
a third entering his right side and exiting to the right of his spine,
Ooh.
and the 4th hitting him in the left thigh and exiting 7 or 8 inches above the point of entry.
Damn.
He stated that either the first or the third wound were sufficient enough to cause death.
Well, I would assume definitely the first.
Right.
And definitely the third.
Right.
I mean, it went through him and exited by his spine.
Son of a bitch.
Well, the coroner's jury ruled that Cruz had been killed by Wyatt and Morgan Earp, Sherman McMaster, Jack Johnson, Holiday, Texas Jack, and 2 other unnamed gunmen who ended up being Dan Tipton and Charlie Smith.
Right.
On the day of the inquest, Arizona Territory Governor Turtle, he arrived in Tombstone to look at the sad state of affairs here. On that same day, the 2 remaining members of the Earp family departed Tombstone. So you guys got to get out of here. It's about to get bad. Tombstone Epitaph reported that both James Earp's wife, Bessie, and Wyatt's common-law wife, Maddie, were departing for Colton, California, where the rest of the Earp family had moved. He's still with Maddie, huh?
Hey, good for them.
She stuck around while she had no choice.
Right. 24th of March. It was a Friday. The Earp posse, including Wyatt, Warren, Doc, Master, Texas Jack, they rode west about 12 miles from their overnight campsite, about halfway between Contention and Drew Station, as we said earlier. The Federal posse rode westerly up a wash towards a prearranged meeting at a hot springs, right? Or is it just a spring?
It was probably hot in Arizona.
Right. Where they expected to meet Smith, who was to bring $1,000 from Tombstone, about 20 miles to the east. Did that happen?
Well, the springs were identified by Wyatt as Iron Springs, but the location was reported the next day by the Tombstone Epitaph as Burley Springs. I think Wyatt would know better. But,
Right.
well, that was about 8 miles south of Tombstone and 4 miles east of Charleston. The spring was located in the Whetstone Mountains west of the Tombstone and later renamed the Mescal Springs.
Okay. With Wyatt and Doc in the lead, 6 lawmen surmounted a small rise overlooking the springs, and they were surprised to find 9 cowboys
Yeah.
sitting there waiting. Curly Bill, Pony Dale, Johnny Barnes, Frank Patterson, Milt Hicks, Bill Hicks, Bill Johnson, Ed Lyle, and Johnny Lyle, all there grinning with their dirty teeth and their dirty face. Look what we got here, boys.
We're going to kill them Earps.
They were camped about the springs, cooking a meal, less than 30 feet down a slight embankment. Once again, the odds were not in the lawmen's favor.
Well, unfortunately, Curly Bill recognized Earp and fired a shotgun without warning, but missed.
Oh, shit.
18 months earlier, supposedly, Wyatt had protected Curly Bill against a mob ready to lynch him for killing Tombstone Town Marshal Fred Wyatt, which he ended up getting pistol whipped by Wyatt,
Right.
and then provided testimony that helped spare Curly Bill from a murder
Come
charge.
on, Curly. What are you doing there, boy? You owe this man.
Wyatt, Doc, they wrote about the fight, and Fred Dodge interviewed 3 participants, yeah. Well, after Curly Bill fired a shot, Earp dismounted, carrying a 22-inch 10-gauge shotgun from a stagecoach he had borrowed from Fred Dodge.
Cool.
The other cowboys fired at the lawmen. Texas Jack, his horse was killed and fell on him, pinning his legs. Texas Jack, he was unable to retrieve his rifle wedged in the scabbard underneath his fallen horse. Doc Holliday, he pulled Vermillion from under his horse, and they, Johnson and McMaster, shot at the cowboys that they sought cover.
All right.
Oh, shit, we got ourselves a little shootout, boys.
Damn. Wyatt, he returned fire across his horse with his own shotgun. Hit Curly Bill in the chest, almost cutting him in half.
Damn.
Curly Bill fell into the water by the edge of the spring, lay dead.
Bye, Curly.
The lawman's fire was so intense that, according to Johnny Barnes, the cowboys who could got away. After killing Brocious, Earp fired his pistol and shot Johnny Barnes in the chest, Milt Hicks in the arm. Attempting to remount his horse, Wyatt had trouble getting up into the saddle because his cartridge belt had slipped down onto his thighs. He was finally able to get on his horse and retreat.
That must have been quite the sight.
You didn't really need to put that in there.
Right, well, it's...
You gotta have some funny shit in there, right? Okay.
Well, the Cowboys fired a
could've
number of
killed
shots. Right, yeah, because the Cowboys fired a number of shots at the Earp party without effect. McMaster, he grazed by a bullet that cut through the straps of his field glasses, or possibly his coat. Later accounts of the gunfight varied. Wyatt, he reported that his long coat was punctured by bullets or buckshot on both sides.
I'm sure.
Another bullet struck his boot heel, and his saddle horn was hit as well, burning the saddle hide and narrowly missing Wyatt. In his unpublished 1926 biography of Earp, John Flood wrote, "The saddle horn had been splintered, his coat hung in shreds, there were 3 holes through the legs of his trousers, 5 holes through the crown of his sombrero, and 3 through the brim." I don't think so, but it's a good story.
Right. Ed Colburn, he wrote and published in the Ford County Globe on the 23rd of May, 1882, that he had visited with Wyatt and Warren Earp in Gunnison, Colorado. In the letter, he relayed Earp's story about how his overcoat was hit on both sides of his body by a charge of buckshot and that his saddle horn was shot off.
That is probably, I mean, I could believe that. I mean, you're in a freaking gunfight, but all that shit that Mr.
Right.
Flood just said, I don't think so.
The Tombstone epitaph reported on the 27th of March that Wyatt received 7 shots through his clothes, and that McMaster's clothing was shot through once. Texas Jack horse has been killed, and the pommel of the Wyatt saddle had been shot off.
They also reported Curly Bill had been killed, though they noted the repeated denials by the Cowboys. Dick Wright, Tony Cracker, insisted they had seen the Cowboys near Drew's ranch below contention, who had reported they had shot the pommel off of Wyatt's horse, and he had shot them without effect. Wyatt, he told Flood that Brocius's Curly Bill's friends buried him on the Patterson Ranch near the Babo Kamari River. Frank Patterson was a member of the Cowboys party, and his ranch was close to the original McClory Ranch site.
The Patterson Ranch, believed to have originally belonged to Frank Stilwell, was located on the Baba Kamari River, about 5 miles west of Fairbank. An unknown individual claimed to be on his way to meet the Earp posse, possibly Craker or Wright, and wrote Tombstone Nugget on March 26th that they had seen a wagon arrive and carry Curly Bill's body away. Rancher Henry Hooker wrote that Wells Fargo agent John Thacker himself went to the place where Curly Bill had been buried and had the body dug up. Thacker identified Bill's body and saw that it was his.
Johnny Barnes, on the other hand, recovered somewhat after the shooting, but later died of his wound.
Oh, shit.
Wells Fargo and Company undercover agent Fred Dodge riding with the Cowboys. Why? He's supposed to be Wyatt's friend.
Right.
He wrote that Barnes had told him that he had shot Virgil. Dodge also wrote in the 1920s that Barnes had told him that Wyatt Earp had killed Brocius.
Oh.
He said, "You will recollect that J.B. Ayers kept a saloon in Charleston that was the headquarters for all the outlaw and rustler element. This man, Ayers, for personal reasons that would take too long to tell, supplied me with reliable information. Through him, I got in touch with several others. Johnny Barnes, whom you will recollect was in the fight at Iron Springs, he gave me much information, not only of that, but of many other things before he was killed. Afterwards, all that they said with reference to Curly Bill was corroborated by Ike Clanton himself. Curly Bill's gone."
Son of a bitch.
That's what he gets for shooting damn priests. Actually, it was Ringo, supposedly.
Right. Saturday, 25th of March, Tucson grand jury indicted Pete Spence, Frank Stilwell, Florentino Cruz, Frederick Bodie, and John Doe Freeze for Morgan Earp's murder.
What? Just 2 of them are dead? 2 of them are dead?
Pete Spence's trial began on the 2nd April, ended on the 5th, when the prosecution called Marietta Spence to repeat the testimony that she gave the coroner's inquest. The defense objected that her testimony was hearsay, and as his spouse, she could not testify against her very own husband.
If I was the judge, I'd be like, "Quick, do you want to divorce him?"
Right. Without her testimony, the prosecution had insufficient evidence. They dropped the case against Spence and Bodie, and the court dismissed the charges. Good lucky on him, right?
On the same day, the Earp party arrived from Iron Springs to an area outside Tombstone and met with supporters, including Charlie Smith and Dan Tipton. They were hoping to receive $1,000 contributed by mining owner and Earp supporter E.B. Gage from Smith, but after Smith was arrested by Behan, Tony Cracker, and Whistling Dick Wright were chosen to carry it, and they had not returned. Gage had meanwhile learned of his mother's death and had left town for the East Coast, so he didn't get no more money.
Nope.
Later that day, the Earp party rode north towards Henderson Ranch, near where they ate and fed their horses. Deputy Sheriff Frank Hereford, he was at the ranch, but didn't show himself in fear of his safety, although the Earp party had only the greatest respect for him.
Right.
You're a sheriff guy. You're supposed to be, like, arresting these guys,
right,
sissy.
25th of March, Sheriff Behan, still a sheriff for some reason, he formed posse of his own that included known criminals. As we said earlier, it had Johnny Ringo, Finn Clanton, and Johnny Barnes. 25-man posse left Tombstone. Searched east of town for the Earp posse for a while before turning back for the night. Around 6:30 a.m. the next day, Behan led a 15-man posse this time, and he headed to the Dragoon Mountains, where they returned that very night again. The Earp posse, they camped Sunday night, March 26, a mile north of the Henderson Ranch, and left at about 7 a.m. the next day for the Sierra Bonita Ranch of Henry Hooker, a wealthy and prominent rancher.
On April 5th, the Tombstone Epitaph printed a letter from an unknown member of the Earp party that recited some of the group's actions after leaving Tombstone and revealed that they were still in the area. The writer said that the Wyatt posse left Tombstone evening March 25th and camped 6 miles north of town. The next day, they headed for the Dragoon Summit Station, where they awaited the train and a messenger. They stopped the eastbound train about 1 p.m. and searched their carriages, but found nothing. It is not known what they were hoping to find.
They're looking for something.
Some obviously money or something. They're going to rob the damn train.
When they arrived at Hooker's Ranch, he congratulated Earp on killing Curly Bill Brocious. He fed the men and their mounts. When Behan's posse was spotted in the distance, Hooker suggested that Wyatt make a stand there. But Wyatt moved into the hills about 3 miles distant near Riley Hill. He's like, I don't want to make a stand at your house. And we ruined stuff, bud. You're a nice man. When Sheriff Behan and his posse arrived at the Sierra Bonita Ranch on Tuesday morning, the 28th of March, at about 7 a.m., Hooker, he refused to provide Behan any info and damned the officers and the law they represented. Damn you!
Well, upon payment, he provided Behan's posse and horses with food and water, but would not supply them with fresh horses.
Oh.
Behan and Under Sheriff Woods sought the assistance of Indian scouts under the command of Colonel Biddle.
I wonder how often that happened. They just come in and just swap horses.
All the time.
That'd be cool, right?
Not if you're attached to your horse.
Right.
Yeah, they got assistance under Colonel Biddle at Fort Grant, they wanted assistance, but were unsuccessful even upon offering a $500 reward for assistance.
Oh.
They then rejoined the remainder of the posse who had lost the Earps posse trail and went to Eureka Springs. Former Pima County Sheriff Bob Paul, 2 first names, who had been in Tombstone at the time and volunteered to ride with the Behan posse, he wrote later to the Tucson Citizen March 3rd, 1898, in response to an earlier story he said was full of errors.
Okay.
He said the Earp posse had told Hooker to tell Behan and his posse where they were camped. Hooker told Behan where the Earps were camped, but the posse left in the opposite direction. The Nugget reported that Behan posse did not return until Friday. Damn, so they even told him they're all for show, huh? Even though he's going to get killed probably.
Yeah, I don't think Behan was even trying to get him. Early that same morning, Dan Tipton arrived in Wilcox on the morning train, rented a horse, started north, presumably towards the Earps location, and he was carrying $1,000 from E.B. Gage for the posse. The Nugget reported that Tipton left on the 5 o'clock stage to catch up with the party near Hooker's Ranch. The Earp posse also received some money from Lewis Cooley, a stage driver and an employee of Wells Fargo, who gave funds from the express company. Oh, wow. On the 15th of April, they all did their taxes, and Cooley traveled to Contention in Benson on business for Wells Fargo, where he met General Superintendent J.J. Valentine. When he arrived in Wilcox to complete his business, Behan was there to arrest him.
Oh. Well, Behan's warrant accused Cooley of aiding and abetting the Earps.
Uh-oh.
Tombstone epitaph labeled the charges as frivolous and said a lawsuit would be filed against Behan.
Uh-oh.
Judge Wells Spicer dismissed the charges.
I bet.
While the location of the federal posse led by Wyatt Earp was well known to most members of the public, Behan's posse never caught up with them.
They didn't try.
And for their vain effort to find and arrest Wyatt and the other 4 charged in Stillwell's murder, Behan's 25-man posse was paid $5 per day plus $3 per day for horse care for 10 days that they were on the trail. $50. Total bill to the county taxpayers was $2,070.70.
That's bullshit. I think that's what Behan said. He's like, listen, guys, we're going to get you guys some money right quick. We're really not going to do anything because we don't want to mess with these guys. And then we'll be on our way. 3rd of April, Tombstone epitaph. They reported that the Earps had eaten breakfast in town on the 27th of March and had been spotted 6 days later on the 20th, on April 2nd, 20 miles north of Hooker's Ranch. And the Albuquerque Journal and San Francisco Daily Report both reported on March 28th that Earp party had already passed through Albuquerque. It also noted that Virgil had made it to L.A. with his wife. The newspaper commented, "This is the wisest course they could pursue. Their lives were not safe for a moment in Tombstone, even if they gave themselves up to the authorities, for the sheriff is inimical to them, and they felt that in his hands they would be entirely at the mercy of the Cowboys," which is true.
Well, but on April 5th, a member of the Earp party told the Tombstone epitaph that they were still in Arizona territory.
Don't they vote for sheriffs? And how's this guy still sheriff?
Well, they haven't had an election yet. This anonymous member of the party reported that from Hooker's Ranch, they rode 5 miles north to the Eureka Springs, where they camped for the night. They then spotted the Behan posse from that location, but avoided drawing their attention. They stayed near Cottonwood the next night, possibly a mill site near the southwest end of the Whetstone Mountains, from which they picked up the trail of fugitive Frank Jackson. The Tombstone epitaph reported that he was wanted on a $2,500 reward. They arrested Jackson April 4th, turned him over to Detective Jack Duncan. Now look at him, picking up some bounties on the way.
Fantastic. 12th of April, 1882. Weekly Nugget reported that Wyatt and his fellow fugitives were camped in a canyon near the Sierra Bonita Ranch. Wyatt, he was quoted as publicly challenging Sheriff Behan to come find him. Sometime from April 10th to 14th, the group headed east out of Arizona. They stopped at Camp Grant before they left their Arizona territory, and Wyatt signed some property over to his sister. Colonel James Biddle told the Earps that warrants had been issued for their arrests, and he would have to hold them. Oh. He invited them in for a meal. When they finished the meal, they found fresh horses ready for them to continue their ride east. Wow.
He's like, just get in. I just wanted you guys to come inside.
Right. I just wanted to meet you, bud.
They rode east again the next day, and on April 15th, they stopped in Silver City, New Mexico. They spent one night in the home of a friend, and the next day sold their horses and saddles before taking a stage to Deming. From there, they took the train to Albuquerque, where they remained for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
To avoid drawing undue attention from their enemies, the Earps visited the offices of the two newspapers and persuaded them not to write any stories about their presence.
Oh, they're like, really? Come on.
Well, that's bold that the newspapers didn't do it.
Right.
Well,
fucking journalists.
probably when they left.
Right. Wyatt and Holiday, who had been best friends since Holiday saved Earp's life in Dodge City during 1878, they had a serious disagreement, and they parted ways in Albuquerque. According to a letter written by former New Mexico Territory Governor Miguel Otero, Wyatt and Holiday were eating at a retreat restaurant in Albuquerque, owned by Fat Charlie, when Holiday said something about Earps becoming a damn Jew boy. Earp became angry and left. Henry Jaffa told me later that Earp's woman was a Jewess. Earp did mezuzah when entering the house. Wow.
Well, Wyatt was staying with a prominent businessman, Henry Jaffa, who was also president of New Albuquerque's Board of Trade. Jaffa was also Jew, and based on the letter, Earp had, while staying in Jaffa's home, honored Jewish tradition by performing the mezuzah upon entering.
I mean,
according to Otero's letter, Jaffa told him that Earp's woman was a Jewess. Okay. Earp's anger at Holiday's religious slur may indicate that the relationship between Josephine Marcus and Wyatt Earp was more serious at the time than is commonly known.
Right. Wow. Especially for those two to be pissed, huh?
Right.
Well, the group eventually split up. They were leaving the uncertain justice of the American frontier for the more defined justice of the federal and state court system. About 29th of April, 1882, Wyatt and his brother Warren, McMaster, Johnson, and Vermillion took a train to Trinidad. Damn. And then Gunnison, Colorado. Trinidad,
Colorado, yeah.
There's a Trinidad, Colorado?
Apparently.
Wow. Where they set up camp on the outskirts of town. They rarely went into town at first except for supplies. Eventually, Wyatt took over a faro game at a local saloon.
He can't stop himself.
Well, Doc Holliday and Dan Tipton, they went to Pueblo and then Denver. The split didn't last long. Less than 2 weeks later, Holliday was arrested on the Arizona warrant for killing Frank Stilwell.
He sure was. Wyatt intervened on Holliday's behalf and persuaded Masterson to fabricate bunco charges against Holiday. Masterson then persuaded Colorado Governor Pitkin to refuse to honor Arizona's extradition request. Afterwards, Holiday and Wyatt met again in June 1882 in Gunnison, and then again, lastly, Holiday was able to see his old friend in the late winter of 1886, where they met in the lobby of the Windsor Hotel, and we already know he was about to be dead. Sadie Marcus described the skeletal Holiday as having a continuous cough and standing on unsteady legs.
Damn. Well, back in Tombstone, rumors flew about the activities of the Earp Party. The Tombstone Nugget also printed a story on 13th of May, 1892, reporting that a rumor that Wyatt had been killed was probably true. They cited that a citizen had seen Wyatt and Henry at Henry Hooker's Sierra Bonita Ranch in Arizona during the previous week, and that Wyatt had been killed there, presumably by parties who had been following him since he left. On that very same day, the Los Angeles Herald and the Albuquerque Evening Review ran the Tombstone Nugget story. Wyatt Earp dead.
Okay. What if he did die and somebody just assumed his identity?
Right.
That's crazy. Well, Wyatt Earp first wrote down the story about the shootout at Iron Springs more than 11 years after the incident. Wyatt told varied accounts of the shootout at the Springs and a number of times during his life. Details varied between the different accounts, like getting his saddle pommel shot off, pulling up his loose cartridge belt, exactly when he helped Texas Jack out from under his horse, the distance at which they initially encountered the Cowboys, and how far Earp dismounted from Curly Bill. Before his death in 1887, Doc Holliday left his account of the gunfight, in which he did credit Wyatt as the individual responsible for shooting Curly Bill and another cowboy.
Oh, nice. Look at that shit.
Of course, Doc don't care.
Right. He's
going to put fucking Wyatt over, even if it was him that did it.
Right. 16th of May, 1882. Sheriff of Arapahoe. Arapahoe. The sheriff of Arapahoe County, Colorado, notified Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan that he had Wyatt and Warren Earp into custody, along with Doc. Behan applied to the governor for money to go to Colorado to bring the Earps back. But Governor Fremont instead gave the funds to Pima County Sheriff Bob Paul. Paul, he had received word on the same day from Denver that the sheriff there had 5 of the Earp party in custody. When Paul arrived in Denver, he served a warrant for Doc Holliday's arrest on charges. Said, we're going to charge you for Frank Stillwell, bud.
Yeah, Wyatt, also in Denver, feared for Holliday's life if he was returned to Tombstone. Like we said, he asked Bat Masterson to get Holliday released. Sheriff at this time, Bat Masterson, appealed to Governor. Yes. Obviously. Well, Sheriff Paul also knew of warrants for the Earps arrest, but he was a friend of the men and never served the warrants. Right. So he didn't like Holliday?
While Behan sought to arrest the Earps, his reputation among some citizens was very, very negative. On the 27th of May, 1882, a strong Democrat was quoted in a letter in the Arizona Sentinel describing the events following the murder of the noted desperado Frank Stillwell. Readers may want to know how these so-called Republican outlaws are regarded by decent, law-abiding people in Tombstone, regardless of politics. The writer was of the opinion that Sheriff Behan wanted the requisition from Governor Fremont, with the object was to have them assassinated. Neither the sheriff nor any of his deputies have ever turned a hand to find the murderers of Morgan Earp.
It's true.
There's no hope for any honest man to get justice here against these scoundrels as long as Behan is in office.
About time somebody said it.
On 29th of May, 1882, Colorado Governor Pickton finally refused to honor Arizona's extradition request, allowing Earp and the others to leave the state. Do what you do, boys. Don't care what you do, you just can't stay here.
Well, unfortunately for them, Wyatt and his posse were unable to apprehend or kill the remaining suspects. Hank Swellen, who was last known when he was questioned in August 1878 about robbing the U.S. mail. Frederick Bodie, he was listed in the 1880 U.S. Census in Charleston, Pima County. Okay. Johnny Ringo was found dead July 14th, 1882 in West Turkey Creek Valley near Chiracahua Park, or Peak, with a bullet right through his temple. The coroner's jury ruled his death a suicide, but I think we'll get to him in a minute. Right. Ike Clanton was wanted for cattle rustling when he was arrested. When he resisted arrest June 1st, 1887, he attempted to draw his rifle on Detective Jonas Brighton, who shot Clanton through the heart. Oh. Phineas Clanton, convicted of grand larceny for cattle rustling in 1887, served 17 months of a 10-year sentence in the Yuma Territorial Prison, and he died in 1906.
No.
Pete Spence, convicted of manslaughter in 1883 and served 18 months of a 5-year sentence. He then married his friend Phineas Clanton's widow in, 1910 and died in 1914.
Oh. Wow. 20th of March, 2005. Holy shit. Wyatt is old. 2005, the 122nd anniversary of the killing of Frank Stillwell. A life-size statue of Holliday and Earp by the sculptor Dan Bates was dedicated by the Southern Arizona Transportation Museum.
I love how Wyatt and Doc get a statue in honor of the guy they killed.
Right. And they put that statue at the restored historic railroad depot in Tucson at the approximate site of the shooting.
Crazy.
Wyatt Earp later claimed that Doc and I were the only ones in Tucson at the time Frank Stillwell was killed.
Stillwell doesn't have a family or something to test this?
Right.
Not long after the gunfight, Johnny Behan, he continued to spread rumors about the Earps. December 7th, 1897, he was quoted in a story in the Washington Post, reprinted by the San Francisco Call, describing the Earps' law-breaking behavior in Tombstone. After referring to the highly controversial Fitzsimmons-Sharkey fight, for which Wyatt Earp was a referee, the article quoted Behan, "The Clanton brothers and the McLowrys were a tough lot of rustlers who were the main perpetrators of the rascally rife in that region. Between them and the Earps rose a bitter feud over the division of the proceeds of the looting. The Earp boys believed they had failed to get a fair divide of the booty and swore vengeance.
Oh, wow.
They caught their former allies in Tombstone, unarmed, and shot 3 of them dead while their hands were uplifted." Behan went on to say, "They were hauled up before justice of the peace. Warrants were issued for their arrest, and summoning a posse, I went out to bring the Earps in. They were chased entirely out of the country, and Tombstone knew them no more." Oh, jeez. Behan, huh?
Wyatt's action in taking justice into his own hands became one of the most well-known examples of American frontier justice in American history. Wyatt Earp became the archetypal image of a real-life anti-hero. 1927, Earp defended his decisions before the gunfight at the OK Corral and afterward to Stewart Lake. authored 1931 largely fictionalized biography, Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal.
So it's not a biography then.
It says this. For my handling of the situation at Tombstone, I have no regrets. No regrets.
No regrets.
Were it to be done over again, I would do exactly as I did at that time. If the outlaws and their friends and the allies imagined that they could intimidate or exterminate the Earps by a process of murder, and then hide behind alibis and the technicalities of the law, they simply missed their guess. I want to call your particular attention again to one fact, which writers of the Tombstone incidents and history apparently have overlooked. With the deaths of the McLaurys, the Clintons, Stillwell, Florentino Cruz, Curly Bill, and the rest, organized, politically protected crime and depredations in Cochise County ceased.
Cool. All right, well, that was a Vendetta ride.
Didn't really get his vendetta.
No, Stillwell was the one that technically killed Morgan, so I guess he did. And Curly Bill was a bitch, so.
Right. He really wanted Ike, though. That's what he wanted.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't go over than this, but Doc Holliday went to, in Holliday's story, we had that Johnny Ringo was found dead in a fork of a large tree.
Right.
And he had a bullet hole through his right temple, which we said. And a revolver was found hanging from a finger of his hand. A coroner's inquest ruled it suicide. But according to the book I Married Wyatt Earp, that was wrote by Earp's wife, Earp and Holliday traveled to Arizona with some friends in early July, found Ringo in the valley, and killed him. But Boyer refused to produce his source manuscripts, and reporters wrote that his explanations were conflicting and not credible, though.
Yeah, because he had no evidence. Well, he did, but...
It's supposedly now recognized by Earp researchers as a hoax. So
okay. They don't know.
Did he kill him? I don't know. Another variant of the story, like we saw on Tombstone, was that Holliday stepped in for Earp in response to gunfight challenge from Ringo and shot him.
Yep.
Well, all right.
There's no evidence to even know where Holliday was when Ringo died. So...
Yeah, so
Anything's
take that with
possible.
what you will, but next week...
You can put that with the conspiracy of Billy the Kid.
Right.
I guess.
Take that with what you will. We will be back next month, actually, with the final part of Wyatt Earp's life and part 4 that we'll take a look at his later life, his mining expeditions, his movie, and then he died. So we'll take a look at his later life. And then, next week we'll be back with serial killers, who we'll be taking a look at. They call him the Dark Strangler or the Gorilla Man.
Oh.
He was an old timer guy. He only lived.
Ooh, is a necrophiliac?
Yeah, he liked to rape the dead bodies, and he's considered the first known serial sex murderer of the 20th century. Earl Leonard Nelson we'll be taking a look at. And he's got a pretty interesting story, but yeah, he was born in 1897, died in 1928, so we're going back early for this guy. But
Damn, both of his parents died of syphilis.
Well, syphilis,
Son of a
hell of a thing.
Wink, yeah.
We'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Mother Bitch
Yep.
Genders.
Bang, bang.